people will see me criticize Nancy Pelosi. I think that's a, kind of a common one, or Chuck Schumer and their approach that I find to be weak, ineffectual. Feinstein, for example, let's just say, I don't know. Some people think she's ineffectual, just maybe. But you have these people, and I think it is entirely possible for them to have done better. And I think it is but for a failure of imagination, for example, when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett, that you go, well, Feinstein did about as good as you possibly could. You can even wind that back to the way that she mishandled the Christine Blasey Ford information that she got in California back with Kavanaugh, and this guy's now on the Supreme Court. And by doing that, it allowed the Republicans to brand this as, the Michael Avenatti stuff, and Avenatti had nothing to do with Blasey Ford. It's just that sort of ineffectual leadership. You can criticize it, and you can say that it's possible to do better, and it's a failure of imagination. Because here's the difference. With the Republicans, they never fail to imagine. They come up with creative reasons to do whatever the hell they want to do. Look at what they're doing right now with Pennsylvania. Look at how they're trying to take Bush versus Gore, which was said by the Supreme Court to not be used as precedent going forward. They're now trying to retroactively turn it into precedent. If I suggested that to the Democrats, or to Democratic listeners, or more Democratic supporting listeners, they would have told me a month ago, oh, come on, Chris, it's kind of outlandish. It's a bit silly. Don't do that.
They're going to do everything.
But the Republicans don't have that little impulse. And you know what they do? They just do it. And then it's done. And then what you thought was impossible is actually possible because it's happening.
And lots of people can rant and rave about it on Twitter, and we can melt as the snowflakes that we are, but it's done did.
And then you do it. So then you have to go do. So I've been thinking about like this court situation, and I mean, I'm still fighting uphill with some people about the idea that you got to do something about the Supreme Court, that the 6-3 thing.
Please tell me your secret plan.
As I was warning, for the last couple of years in the show here, this is not surprising to any listeners, but I will point it out because I was very worried about this. This has played out worse than I could have imagined, but this is a thing that I thought was very real and why this election mattered. I've been thinking about how do you go ahead and fix the Supreme Court, and I decided this week to actually go and, as Ron Paul would suggest, use the Constitution. And I went and refreshed myself on Article 3. And Article 3 is pretty straight ahead when it's talking about what the Supreme Court is. And it's pretty oblique and pretty open. It basically says there's going to be a thing called the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is going to have a person named the Chief Justice, which could be just as simple as understanding like the way we have like a local court, right? You've got a local court, you've got a judge, only we wouldn't call that judge in this case. We'd call him Chief Justice. Makes sense. It really could have been conceived and thought of as just a one judge system. Well, when the first Congress convenes, they are drafting laws and doing important laws. And the reason I want to mention the first Congress here is the first Congress is comprised of a lot of the drafters and signatories of the Constitution. And so if we're going to try to interpret and understand constitutional law here, the first Congress and how they go about interpreting the Constitution is actually probably pretty useful because, like, if it was a really massive deviation, you would have expected someone in the first Congress to maybe bring that up at some point, or, that shit wouldn't have fly. Like, John Adams is kicking around in this Congress, and James Madison's in this Congress.
They were kind of good at that.
Yeah, right. No, right. Like, James Madison would have been like, whoa, come on. No. That's not right. So
there's an entire musical about this.
They come up with the Judiciary Act of 1789. So that's being drafted. The Constitution's ratified in 1787. First Congress is convened. So you think about that first term. This is being worked out, and they pass it in 1789. That establishes that there's going to be a Supreme Court with multiple justices, that you have to have 4 to have a quorum, and more or less calls for 6, but leaves open to Congress entirely how many number of justices you're going to put on there. Even the whole idea of expanding, adding justices or removing justices, strictly speaking, all of it's constitutional, because the only thing that is required in the Constitution is the presence of a Supreme Court and the presence of a Chief Justice. So what I want to start with here, when we talk about constitutionality is that Congress has the power to define what the Supreme Court is. And this also makes a little bit more sense if you want this back to checks and balances. So you've got the triangle system. You got the president, you've got Congress, and you've got the judiciary. By process of elimination here, let's just start with the president. The president, if you understand common law at all, cannot make laws. That's the whole point. The whole point is that Congress has the ability to make laws. So Congress or the president also can't make courts. He can pick justices, or she can pick justices. They can establish, nominations, but even that all has to go where? Back to Congress. So then, and the other part of checks and balances is the judiciary. Judiciary can't be a check on itself. So if the president's out of the loop and the judiciary is necessarily out of the loop, where is most of the power, if not all of the power, lay? Right here back in Congress. Congress gets to set the rules for the courts, and it has pretty broad authority to do that. And so if they want to pass laws and change and define the courts, they can and they should. So all this is to just set up what I'm discussing is not only well within the realm of the politics of the possible, it is as firmly routed in the Constitution as anything Brett Kavanaugh and his fever dreams come up with as he's drinking Schlitz malt liquor in the middle of the night and drafting up ways to steal the election. So what should happen with the Supreme Court? I think first, Schlitz malt Kavanaugh and also handmaiden Amy Covid Barrett probably need to not be on the court. So what needs to happen? You could impeach them. That is one way of doing this. There's also a providence that judges will serve on courts in times of good behavior. Good behavior being interpreted to also include, like, if a judge shoots somebody, like, they can't be on the court anymore. If they've got to stand trial. A judge can't be a judge if they're in prison. So, there's kind of a way of figuring out what they meant by good behavior here. So that's one way of doing it. If maybe we figured out where Brett Kavanaugh's baseball tickets got paid off, maybe that could be salacious. That might be a reason to pull Brett from the court here. But we can even skip all of that and just say, if the Congress can expandeth, why can't the Congress taketh away? And to add more precedent to this, Congress did taketh away. When? When, oh, Chris? It's probably 100 years ago. No.
When did they do that, Chris?
2016.
Oh, yeah, plot twist.
But yeah. So like, Congress is doing this, and no one was like, "Oh, that's unconstitutional." Would have been interesting if Obama had challenged that. It actually would help their argument right now. But I think the argument is, strictly speaking, no, it's completely constitutional. Congress has the ability to remove justices. It's not just not seating another justice. It wasn't the Scalia seat. That's only in terms of real estate and stuff. In principle, there were just 8 justices on the Supreme Court at that point, and then Congress elected to expand the court. And they also, in choosing to not replace the person in the seat, chose to reduce the size of the court. Congress has the ability to add and subtract. And so I think odd number justices, we've generally established in norms, probably better than even numbers of justices. I think that's right. 7 is a good number. It still respects the way the balance of the court was about a decade ago, which was a little bit right of center. However, with 7 justices and the ability to replace stuff, the court can change a little bit faster with the times. And also now, Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, gone. You remove them. I also think other changes here. The confirmation process needs to be moved from the Senate, which is not representative at all. And so, like, when Mitch McConnell and now the Democrats make this really weird argument that we need to let the people have a voice, if that was going to, mean anything at all, one, you would listen to the popular vote. So, like 2016, who won the popular vote, or you listen to the actual people's house in Congress, which is the House of Representatives. Right now, you're listening to the patrician's house. And so the Senate is never going to be representative of the demography of the country. It's only by like accident right now that's like sort of close, or will be pretty close. But this should be done by the House of Representatives. So I think that's another big change. I think the court system, another thing that was established in the Judiciary Act of 1789 is that the court system can be defined by Congress, what the map is. The map is due for a change. It hasn't been changed in a long time, and I think we need to add circuit courts. And then we also need to end lifetime appointments and reduce it down to 120-year term. So that is my big fix and my history lesson and my lecture about don't let people tell you that this is not constitutional, that this is court packing. It doesn't, most importantly, fixing the courts does not necessarily require adding more justices. You could also remove them. There are lots of ways to, I don't want to use the phrase skin the cat because I'm a friend of all felines, but there are lots of different ways to get on this horse.
Good job, Chris. You have done a great book report, and I love your summary of Mice and Men. No, you've made some really good points. Here's my questions, though.
Okay.
Because I didn't do the research that you did, and I will not because, like I said, I'm just trying to get through the day, let alone next week. For one thing, you say remove Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh.
Mm-hmm.
How? What does that mean? Who points at them and says those two in particular? They're gone.
We're
now.
phasing out the seats based on recency. First on, first off.
So is that something where the Congress, the Senate in particular, would have to convene?
Congress
what
just
is
has to pass a law, and the courts can't protect it because all they can do is interpret constitutionality. And Article 3, Section 1, a court,
has nothing
a
in
chief
there.
justice. Yeah, there is, the Republicans don't have a great defense here. They would be looking at subsequent Congresses, and what I'm making here is an originalist argument. I am now an originalist, and that makes me have a certain heft and respectability that I've long commanded but have been denied.